Hi, and welcome to the You Think Too Much podcast. My name is Josh, and I'll be your host through this series. If you did listen to the first podcast and soldiered through the wind noise, I'd like to say thank you very much for giving us another chance. I promise you the sound quality is much better with this recording. As mentioned at the start of the first podcast, this project is a lot about showing that it's okay to learn on the fly with some things. Not everything has to be perfect, and sometimes you just need to jump in and give things a shot. I hope you can stick with me through the sound quality issues, and the content outweighs those issues and you're happy to listen. From our last podcast, you should know all about how and where to market your business in the AEC industry, as well as some places to get some help in doing so. In this podcast, we will talk to Kathryn Skopal in depth about what to do with those clients once you've got them, and how best to manage their information to improve your sales in the most efficient way. Kathryn gives some great insights into not just how to collect client information, but how best to maintain its accuracy across your business, and some of those places businesses are losing a lot of time and not even realizing it. We also discuss the importance of protecting your clients' information from not only the outside world, but from theft within your own company. As you'll hear, Kathryn is extremely passionate and knowledgeable about what she does and helping her clients. This was a great chat and I learned a lot from it. I genuinely hope you do too. So without further ado, here's the chat that I had with Kathryn. So for everyone out there in audio land, I'm here today with Kathryn Skopal. That's said correctly, isn't it? Yeah.
Sure is.
And Kathryn, can you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself, what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I run a business called Keeping Life Simple, and it's all about automating the customer lifecycle and that business.
In this podcast, we will talk to Kathryn Skopal in depth about what to do with those clients once you've got them, and how best to manage their information to improve your sales in the most efficient way. Kathryn gives some great insights into not just how to collect client information, but how best to maintain its accuracy across your business, and some of those places businesses are losing a lot of time and not even realizing it. We also discuss the importance of protecting your clients' information from not only the outside world, but from theft within your own company. As you'll hear, Kathryn is extremely passionate and knowledgeable about what she does and helping her clients. This was a great chat and I learned a lot from it. I genuinely hope you do too. So without further ado, here's the chat that I had with Kathryn. So for everyone out there in audio land, I'm here today with Kathryn Skopal. That's said correctly, isn't it? Yeah.
Sure is.
And Kathryn, can you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself, what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I run a business called Keeping Life Simple, and it's all about automating the customer lifecycle and that business, all those business processes that can revolve around that customer. So it's using mostly just a customer relationship management system as that foundation, where a lot of the information is stored on customers and clients, and then funneling that through to accounting systems or project management programs, and just making sure that everything connects, and you can share that data backwards and forwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say customer management systems, what sort of thing are we talking about?
So customer relationship management, CRM. Usually I go, yeah, CRM, and people sort of, some will know it, no worries, and then others sort of are like, I've got no idea what that is. So you try and not use short form.
I've certainly heard the term before. Management systems are something that usually typically very large businesses use. It's, like I say, I've heard it from some of my bigger clients, but I've never really gotten a full understanding of what it is. So, what sort of size businesses would you typically deal with then if you're using those sorts of systems?
So I deal with small to medium, and that's I use a system called Infusionsoft, which is an American-owned company, and they have specialised in CRM marketing automation for the last sort of 7-10 years. Putting it together. So they've been a player in this area for a long time.
Okay.
And I've been using it the business has been going for 5 years, and I've been on and off for 5 using that system. And so I've dabbled in a lot of the CRMs and the marketing automation platforms around, and that's why I went with Infusionsoft, because they're one of those systems that it's very good to be able to scale. So the businesses I work with are constantly growing.
Yeah.
And what sort of happens and what I see happen, people start a business and that's no problem, funds are low, and they'll go, yep, Mailchimp, awesome, put that in place, it's free. It is a really good platform to a certain point, and then you start to outgrow it, and it only does marketing automation. It doesn't hold and store that information on customers, so you don't sort of know, you can't build custom fields and you can't interact with a customer based on something they might have entered or bought or done. And it's definitely growing. A system like Mailchimp, it does a lot more. It does your landing pages, your e-commerce, and a lot can plug into it.
Yeah.
But and it's the same as there's ActiveCampaign, Ontraport. Ontraport's very much CRM marketing automation, and they've come a long way as well. But yeah, I just went with Infusionsoft because it is one of the big players that you can scale. So, for example, one of my clients has been with Infusionsoft for years, and their next step is Microsoft Dynamics, which is a $2 million a year implementation. Yep. I won't be doing that because that's an enterprise. Yeah, so you've got these programs which are enterprise level, which is very much, so someone will sort of say, do you do Salesforce? And I'm going, that's your enterprise level, that's your banks, that's your big companies that are using Salesforce.
Yep.
And your Microsoft Dynamics and all of that can be on that side of things. I'm sort of in this sphere where we can do a lot with Infusionsoft and that system. So we've come a long way with implementing all of that.
So just to so that I've got a proper understanding of how this works, by the sounds of it, so my understanding is Mailchimp basically is for automating marketing emails. So you put your newsletter or whatever it is that you want to send out to all your clients into Mailchimp, and then it sends it out automatically. So you're saying this Infusionsoft is something that does more than that for you?
Yes. Yeah. So there's sort of two sides of it with a few extra sides. You've got your marketing automation and your customer relationship management sort of system. Your marketing automation is your email newsletters, your abandoned shopping cart. So when someone leaves something online and you want to give them a bit of a nudge to go and buy it again, that's sort of e-commerce. And then you've got the side of holding that information. Yep. So the marketing automation tools like your Mailchimps is a lot more list management. So there will be, you'll have a list of people who have bought your product, and a list of people who have gone onto your website and signed up for an ebook, and so you've got all these lists and you're managing those lists.
Right.
Whereas a more in-depth platform is sort of looking at what has happened throughout those encounters and and all the information we've been able to pull from them. So they could have subscribed to an ebook, entered information into a form. So they could have said, oh, we're a company, I'm the owner, and our employees are 10 to 15. So they've given you that information. Okay. And then you've gone, okay, well, that's this size business. I'm going to segment them over here and give them more targeted information based on that. Okay. And then go, oh, look, and then yesterday they came back to my website and they went and read this blog, and this blog. And now, they've signed up for something else a week later. And so you can follow them throughout this journey to go, okay, now they're actually an opportunity. There's someone that's interested in what we're doing. And so it can work for much larger cost items as well, because you can put them through that sales opportunity stages and nurture them through that process.
So there's two questions that sort of come up for me here. First one is so you say small to medium businesses, how many people would typically be working in a business for your, like in one of your clients?
I do have, I have a mix. I will say that I have people who have just started out and they're wanting something solid.
Just individuals working for themselves.
Yep. And then I've got the largest is sort of, you know, call centres, 100 plus employees.
Yep. Okay. And it works for everyone in between, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. And it works for everyone in between, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, you know, somebody that's starting or, you know, has been going for a few years now, that's, you know, one of the things that I see these things like Mailchimp and all that, and I often think, there's, you know, I got no use for any of this, or I couldn't, you know, it's just another thing I have to try and generate content for or do something for, you know. So it's interesting to hear that these kinds of things work for people who are just starting out. So then the next question would be, by the sounds of it, this is a data gathering thing. So this is what a lot of people talk about, the big data, right? This is basically along those lines from my understanding, yeah? So what then, you know, you've mentioned there that you can go back and have a look at what one customer is doing, but you can have a look at then trends of what all your customers are doing. You know, you can get custom reports printed out for you, or, you know, viewed on the screen or something to see this sort of stuff.
So yes, that's a big part of it, and a lot of the time I think some businesses don't see the value in their own data, and so they can be running ads and they can be trying to get the leads in the door, but they don't know how they're actually getting there. They know they have a broad overview, but if they don't have a system collecting it, they can sort of hit a wall and be like, well, we don't know if you know, one Google ad converted it, or a Google ad converted it and a Facebook ad then popped up and reminded them, and then they entered our system, and then 3 months later, after a long nurture process, they've now converted. So it's sort of, we're able to see all that data and pull the reports out. And another big part of it is actually using, because I found with a lot of my clients, because I look at that whole business automation and not just see all that data and pull the reports out. And another big part of it is actually using, because I found with a lot of my clients, because I look at that whole business automation and not just sort of going your marketing side of things, that's a big part of it, and that customer lifecycle, but looking at, you know, projects and time spent on projects, because we're in the project management system. So if you've got a customer that's come in the door and they've signed on, and then a project has started, and you've got 3 team members working on that project and they're accumulating so many hours on this, then you've got a program over here working there.
Monitoring that, yeah.
Yeah, and then you might have Xero or QuickBooks as another system sort of going, well, what's happening over here? And so what I found is a lot of my clients were going from Google Analytics to project management software to Xero and back to Infusionsoft, and all these sort of different points where I was like, we need to consolidate this and bring it together. So that's where we started to implement the business intelligence dashboards, which is the BI, what people sort of say. So there's a few sort of business intelligence platforms, and it's just sort of taking all that information, consolidating it and building the reports that are actually beneficial for that business. So they might need to see, you know, your basics of, yes, 5 hours were spent on this task and we billed them this much. What are we actually making? And we spent this much getting that client in the door. What now are we actually making? Bringing all of that data together and watching it and having it live. Because that's a lot. So I've been doing work with a lot of financial clients, accountants, brokers, that sort of thing. Is a lot of it, they wait end of month to tally everything up, give commissions, do all that sort of stuff. So we're sort of going, well, let's pull it together live so that you can actually see where you are. In
your business, business dashboard, you call it?
Yeah,
business information dashboard. So in that, you're pulling in your Xero or your accounting software and your Infusionsoft and all that sort of stuff. So, okay, well, that all sort of makes sense. I mean, it sounds like a pretty good deal. So if someone was to come into you today and say, okay, I want you to help me with my business, I'm in a mess, where would you sort of typically start at?
So all the time, depending if it's a new business, they don't need to go through the intense sort of this, I call it the scoping study, of sort of getting in the business and going, what programs do you have, what are you doing manually, what reports do you need to, what are the KPIs, what actually needs to be pulled out at the end of the day, it's quite a long document that just sort of asks all these questions about how things are currently running and how they want it to run. And we sit down and look at all of that, and then I do up a big sort of report with your wireframe sort of outlines of going, okay, well, we've got they're running ads, we've got lead generation, and they usually, a lot of my clients will engage marketing. They'll either have a marketing manager that will engage someone to run the Google ads and the Facebook, social media, all that side of things.
Yep.
And then we take care of everything sort of after that.
Okay.
And then, so we will join the dots and we'll go, okay, well, what happens through each step? So, once you've nurtured them and educated them on what's happened and they've converted, what is an onboarding process look like? What part of that can we automate? Where does information need to be sent? Does it need to be sent to the accounts department? Yes. And what information does the accounts department actually need?
Yep.
Does it need to be sent to the accounts department? Yes. And what information does the accounts department actually need?
Yep.
We need to start a project in the project management system. We need to, whatever else sort of needs to connect, we're able to then send that information across and make sure that information that has already been entered through the nurturing process at the beginning isn't being double handled down the track. So
Okay.
isn't sort of going, let's copy and paste this over to this system and let's,
Yep. Okay, we've got our client entered in here.
Yes, yeah.
Next, across to this piece of software, we have to enter all that information again.
Yes,
Okay.
and that's sort of what I saw a lot happening in financial services.
Yep.
Is they all run separate spreadsheets. They all have their own sort of separate data, own lists, own sort of customers. And then a customer will enter, hand write a form, and then that person will have to enter that information into 5 different portals or different sort of things, and then if they apply for another loan or do something else, start another business, sort of going, we're going to get them to fill out the same form, even though we've got all the information,
Yep.
but they've got to do it again. And so there was all this double handling and wasting of time and human error and
Yep.
just that. It's just nuts how much time can be wasted.
It's funny, we have the exact same issues within drafting in ever so slightly different ways,
Yeah.
but the same thing. We've got these systems that have come up through paper-based systems where they've got no choice but to maybe write it out and then photocopy it a dozen times or something, to put it in multiple different filing cabinets across the office or whatever. And a lot of people still think of that same mentality, they've still got that, this is the way we've always done it. It amazes me. And this is part of the reason I wanted to start doing it. It amazes me. And this is part of the reason I wanted to start doing this kind of thing is because the more I talk to people, the more I realise everybody across multiple industries has got the exact same dramas, right? They all do the same things, the same issues. And one of the really big ones, which you're just sort of starting to touch on there, is the double handling, which induces human error. And the fact that there are systems out there to do these things for you that that eliminate that human error and streamline so much stuff. So you end up saving all this time as well. So so then to take that a little bit more in depth, how do you streamline that? So I can understand what you're saying there. I've got a client database in a spreadsheet that I keep that this client's done this work with me, etc., which is obviously very tedious and time consuming to fill out, but well worth it. There's a lot of information that I capture in there, and even just recently to chase up people for the podcast, actually, I went back to some, I've got a cold calling list there that I did a couple of years ago when I was really first starting out and chasing clients, and rang somebody off that cold calling list that I had quite a good meeting with, who was working on some really interesting stuff, to see if they're interested in coming on the podcast. So I know that just having that database there with that information is really helpful. But then obviously if they become a client, like you're saying, I then have to go back and get that information out of there, or I have to get them to give me the new information, updated information somehow, and then I have to enter that into, we use QuickBooks, so into QuickBooks it goes, and then if I need to use it on drawings and things, it has to go somewhere else. So how does your systems, like what part of this system that you're talking about, how does that automate that, and how do you feed that down into all these other softwares?
Yeah. So a lot of it, so say, for example, the podcast, and I'll use, because I told you. So a lot of it, so say, for example, the podcast, and I'll use, because I told you I started my own podcast, and it will get off the ground. It will. I automated that whole process of building basic landing page and directing people there to either sign on to be interviewed or to tick a box and go, hey, I don't want to be interviewed, but keep me notified till when it gets launched.
Okay.
So that was sort of the first thing. Then that went to, when they did that, I sent them an email with a link to a web form.
And when you say you sent them an email,
the
system
sends them an email.
Okay.
All very personal. It had my name on it. And with that, then Infusionsoft sent them an email with a link to a web form saying, hey, thanks so much, just want to get some more information from you beforehand. So they filled in all the questions that I had needed, just about, wanting to know more about their business, giving me things like their website so that I could go and have a look at their website, and all just collecting basic sort of information. Not a long form, probably 5 fields, just collecting the basics. Then from that submission, the system sent another email going, great, fantastic, let's have a quick chat. In between that step, I would have set a task for myself to actually look at their answers, do a bit of research and see if they were a fit. Yep. So a notification would have come up and said, hey, this person submitted the form. We need, you need to go and have a look at their website, go and have a look at what they've got to say before triggering that next email. Yeah. So when that was completed, I would go no, you're not a great fit for me, which didn't happen.
Everyone's great fit.
Or it went, then I sent them an email with just a link sort of going, let's have a quick chat. Before we actually sit down and do the interview, let's just have a quick chat. I'll tell you what I'm going on about, what we'll chat about, what you can say, all this sort of stuff. So that had a scheduling link in it, which I use Schedule Once, which connects to my calendar and connects to Infusionsoft. It has a native integration, which is great. We can talk about the difference of that later. And then so it goes, so then they can book a time that suits them. I was working, this was fantastic because a lot of my interviews were international. So I was dealing with people in all sorts of different time zones, England, the States, South Africa, just absolutely everywhere. So it took out the whole, I'm available at 2 p.m. on this date, what time is that for this? They would open it up for their time zone, and it would connect to my calendar for my time zone and only show them the times that were suitable. I did have to, extend my this calendar, the podcast calendar that I put together, out a little bit more because time difference. So there were some late nights and early mornings, but that's a given. And then once they scheduled that, then another email would be triggered, sort of going, this is a quick chat, we'll just see how it goes. And then when that's done, I would trigger another email saying, okay, book a time to do the actual interview. Yeah. And then when they booked that time, and this is all in sort of one big campaign, when they booked that time, the last sort of email would be like, okay, here's a list of some questions I might ask. Here's, make sure your camera's on, make sure, you've got this sort of a mic, make sure, so that all of this information, it makes me look very professional because it's all sort of laid out and done well. Yep. And it's just triggered on what they've done. Okay. And systems talk to each other. Right. So then that's based on a podcast and how all of that information, but it would be similar in the sense of if you had a client come on and a lead come in and they've entered, so we mentioned that form earlier on the website where it might say, and you may come across these where you're downloading a free ebook and they want your first name, your last name, your company, how many employees, your position in that company, and maybe where you're located or something. So there's, 5
just really basic, quick and easy to fill out.
Yeah, and from that, I mean, me on the other side are able to get how big the company is, who that person is, whether they're a decision maker or just an employee. And from there, you're then able to take it to the next step and contact them or warm them up with different information. And then over more things that you might get them to do, you're collecting more information. And it might be that you then go out on site and you get them to answer a bunch of questions. And all of those things we can put into the CRM. And that then might populate your proposal. Okay. So then you would connect a program like WebMerge is a great one, connecting your systems to actually go, here's my templated proposal, because proposals are generally the same document, as much as people go, oh, they're so personal and we tailor make them. So
that's
probably not doing something right if you're doing everyone individually.
That's something I'm campaigning hard against in the drawing world, the drafting design world, is that, every job's completely individual. No, it's not. You use the same programs, you use the same templates effectively when you start out. There is so much that so many people can customise that they just don't realise. I've cut my time to actually do a job down. Most jobs it's 25-30% easily from what I was doing 5 years or more ago, just by standardising a handful of stuff, and it's the things that we do all the time that are exactly the same. So it's using a program, say like Infusionsoft, and then you might have 5 types of proposals that you use. By using something like WebMerge, you would upload those templates into it, and it's just a really advanced, it kind of is, way of doing. So with Word and Excel, and you've got Mailmerge, and you put your addresses into letters. It's that, but using your CRM and your proposal documents to sort of go, we need to pull all this information into this proposal document, and depending on what forms you've filled out, what boxes you've ticked, and what sort of things you've done, you're able to just generate that document. So just to be super clear, I mean, you've still obviously got room there then to tailor that document as much as you need to. So if it is a really, so what I find with the drafting side of things, right? So just to relate it back to something that we would normally do, we might do a platform. Right, now a platform is the same name whether it's in a food production facility or a mining facility or somebody's backyard shed. A platform is a platform, but they're all tailored to be exactly in the same place. To be in their individual places to suit the needs and the requirements of whatever that platform needs to do. So from that, you'd sort of go, well, you can't standardise anything about that. Well, the fact is you can. Things like platforms are governed by standards, for example. So straight away, there's a whole heap of things you can and can't do, which means that you've got a very limited window of, say, handrails that you can use governed by standards, for example. So straight away, there's a whole heap of things you can and can't do, which means that you've got a very limited window of, say, handrails that you can use and things like that. And then when you introduce, say, an industry standard, so there's a handful of handrail manufacturers that have good systems that you can easily adapt to, to the edges of your platform. Doesn't matter what shape or size or whatever it is, they've got the right bends and everything there for you. So most people in industries use those kinds of handrailing systems. So they, yes, we can sort of go, all right, well, that platform needs to be a weird shape and have multiple levels, but we can standardise the steel that it's made out of and the handrail system that we're going to use in there. So within our program first, we set up all that information, and then when we come to do the actual platform, that's where we customise it. So in the same way, you're saying if you've got, most of the information that you send out to your client is going to be identical every time, whether you're a financial institute or anybody else doing anything else. You're sending out information to your client about what you do or what you're going to do for them, and for the most part that's going to be the same. every time, isn't it? So for me, that's drafting. I'm going to, or 3D scanning or whatever it is, I'm going to send them out that information. So I might have a drafting template set up and a 3D scanning template set up, and then I might have a third one that's both of them combined. That's sort of what you're saying?
Yep.
And then we send that off, depending on what the client's input into that first, so that there might be a field in that first bit of information that we gather on them that says, what services are you interested in? And then when they put that in, your system automatically pulls their information together, sends out the bit that they're interested in, the 2D, 3D, or combined.
Yep.
And then from there, they can fill out another form at the bottom of that or something with some more information, some detailed information about their project, which then helps us put together a proposal.
I'm not giving you all that information
Too
for
hard.
one ebook. It's too hard. You would step them out through the process and sort of go, we just need name and email or company and what they need, and then the next step of the form is 3 more fields that just sort of, and depending on those answers, you might send them to a different form, or you might sort of go, okay, we'll stop the process there because they're not a right fit, or whatever it is. So you could step them out through that process. All that information would be pulled in and then pushed out to whatever template or document or whatever needs to be filled out. And then it's that whole thing where that document at the end could there's instant where it could be done, generated as a PDF, sent out to them, they can sign it straight away and it's returned. Or it's just sort of going, we've got the basics of the information, let's generate it in a Word document for us to edit a few things in there, change up a little bit, but you've got the foundation pretty solid that you're not spending 3 hours on a document. Instead, you're just changing it maybe 15 minutes later, you're sending it off to the client. So there's different steps. You can break it up to be whatever it needs to suit.
So these things are completely customizable to whatever you want. These systems that you're talking about that you use, that if somebody comes in, say for instance I'm a drafting firm, I can come in and completely configure it to whatever I want, and then the accounting firm can completely configure it to whatever they want.
Within reason,
industry.
yes.
Of course, everything's got its limits, but
it's not industry specific. So say take Infusionsoft as a platform. You've got your standard fields, which are your addresses, phone numbers, tax file numbers, company information, birthdays. All those are pretty set, and then you can customize 100 other fields, so they can be drop downs or checkboxes or all the other things, and you can enter that with your own information. And use that however you want.
And then the forms, so that's the forms that the client fill in, for example. So then the thing that's triggered to be sent to them, the email effectively that's sent to them, that can then be as generic and bland as you'd like it to be, or it can be super specific to your client depending on the information that they've put into that field. So there's obviously a bit of a trick here then to knowing what you have to put into your forms and then what you have to be sending out to your client.
And that's where that sort of scoping study comes in, and we look at how to break it all down. And that's what some people just want to break down the first part and just sort of get one sort of stage automated, and then some people want to do the whole business, and we look at the whole business. But doing that investigation and understanding how their sales process works, we're able to break that down, because whilst you've got your customer life cycle and you've got you're generating leads, you're educating them and nurturing them, you're converting them, in that sort of stage, if you're dealing with probably what you do, in the sense of people aren't just putting their credit card details and buying it and it's a $50 purchase, it's a bit more of a nurture process. You would have then your sales sort of break down, your opportunity sets, and that would be sort of where we're talking to them, they've sent a proposal, and sort of breaking down those steps, and in each of those steps you've got things that you can automate. So that could be the proposal document, or reminding someone to give them a call, or setting an alert. I think people always find this, automation is what I do, so I know a lot of things, but even when I'm selling it to clients and they get a call straight after they've opened my proposal document, they're like, wow, I was just looking at your proposal. I'm like, that's what I do. I know. I know you've opened the email.
Yeah.
I know you've looked at the proposal. I've been able to see that. That's why I'm giving you a call.
This is proof of concept for you.
Yes. And they're like, wow, it's really creepy. I'm like, yes, but...
Well, that kind of leads me into something that's been going on in the back of my head this whole time, is what are you, like, so you're gathering this information, and this is a big problem that you see a lot of the scare media things now. I'll sort of be honest here up front, is that I know a fair bit about how all this works anyway first, but obviously people who are listening to this who aren't necessarily familiar with it are going to want to know, how is that information protected, and how is that stored, and what sort of assurances can they give to their clients? I mean, obviously this system's been around for a while and they're going to have dealt with all this sort of stuff. So what things are in place to protect this information, and what's to stop, I guess, not so much hackers, because that's such an overused term, and I know some guys who have taught me a little bit about how all that works, and I know that hacking isn't what the media makes it out to be. But I guess what's to stop people from using the information incorrectly? Like you're saying, you know when somebody's reading their email, like that sounds, like say, creepy and scary to a lot of people. But the reality of that is obviously that it's like a read receipt that you send on an email or something like that.
Yeah.
It notifies you that they've opened their email and read it effectively. QuickBooks has got a similar thing when you send an email like that.
Yeah.
It notifies you that they've opened their email and read it effectively. QuickBooks has got a similar thing when you send an invoice out. It shows you that they've opened that invoice and a timestamp on it. So.
So when they say, I never
really
got
weird
it.
Hours. Yeah. Well, that's it. It's not so much that you're getting into their camera and watching them and, yes, they've opened my email, so I'll ring them right now. So what's in place to, protection-wise for not just the clients, but I guess your clients as well, the people who are using these systems to stop this information getting out?
And there is a lot of information stored on the Infusionsoft servers, and all of that is protected by the laws around the world, and that includes...
So if you're using Infusionsoft or one of these business dashboards, the business information dashboards, all of that information is stored on the server of the company that you're using it, right? Yeah. And those things are protected pretty damn well.
They're pretty well locked down. I mean, touch wood, nothing has happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you look at the grand scheme of things, Sony got hacked, and the reality of hackers is that that's what they do, is that they try and get in. But a lot of people sort of picture this, either a group of people in hoodies sitting around the computer, like malicious intent. So, like I mentioned, I know a few guys who have played with this. They've been right into computers since we were sort of teenagers, I guess, and they've played around with it. And basically, they say that there's two types of hackers. So there's those that go out deliberately to cause mischief, which aren't very many apparently. Like they deliberately go out and look for things, and they'll hack a website and put up. I think Anonymous did a little while back to a heap of the ISIS, and put up. I think Anonymous did a little while back to a heap of the ISIS Twitter pages and things, they put up pictures and things on their Twitter pages. So there's those kind of hackers. But then, from what I've been told, most hackers just find a flaw in a system somewhere because that's what they're interested in. It's kind of like bird watching for them. And they send an email to the company and just say, hey, look, we were messing around on the weekend. We found this, this weakness in your system. You might want to get it checked out.
Yeah.
And obviously the Sony hacks and the Apple hacks and things like that, if your information's out online, you can never be 100% protected, as has been proven time and time again. But I guess if people out there are listening and they're sort of interested in this, that's one of the questions they got. They know that it's on a protected server somewhere, and those kinds of companies spend fortunes on.
Because it's their company. I mean, if they lose it, it's their reputation.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are a lot of things in place to protect it. But that's occasionally we have to build our own sort of bridges between programs, and that's hosted with us. But a lot of the times it's we hand it over. We're putting it on your dome, like we're putting it on your hosting servers, we're putting it on your stuff, because we want them to own it at the end, unless they're quite happy to keep paying us because it does need to be monitored, and it does need to be sort of checked and looked at, because programs update, things break. But a lot of the time we sort of go, if you're not going to do that, then here you go, you have it, because that they can then get access and get anyone to work on it if that's what they want. But it's that they can then get access and get anyone to work on it if that's what they want. But if it's the programs that they're using, like the business intelligence dashboards and Infusionsoft and Xero and all of that, that's all held on those program servers and not our stuff. And we have built some custom systems off the back of other systems. So there's a program that we put in place, which we put in place for our financial clients, which is a program that sits on top of Infusionsoft, which is just, we can customize that completely on top of Infusionsoft and only show certain people certain information, and only have certain forms for certain people, and trigger automation based on what's put in that. So it's sort of a prettier version of Infusionsoft that sits over the top, and we customize that, and I suppose it's protecting your company from your own people, because that's where a lot of these things come in. Is
people
internal
stealing databases and that's why I say
so locking
the hacking
down
thing. Everyone's so focused on the hacking thing, and there's big bad worlds out there to get us, but they don't realise that Bob's sitting in the back cubicle copying their entire client list and information across to his USB drive because he's off to a new job in a couple of weeks.
All sorts of stuff. So even stuff. So if with your e-commerce people and stuff like credit cards, you go online shopping, you put your credit card details in, that's sitting on their if it's an Infusionsoft system, it is sitting in Infusionsoft, but we can't actually get access to it.
It's encrypted.
It's completely encrypted.
And even if you can view the file, it comes up just all
you
weird
can't,
symbols and
even me as a consultant, we can't get that. The card is there because we're able to charge it, but we can't see it. We can't take that information and put it into another system. The card is there because we're able to charge it, but we can't see it. We can't take that information and put it into another system.
They're put into those what they call them, crypto lockers or whatever they call them.
It's pretty solid.
I
just never want to. I mean, it's amazing in the sense things. I think people always have, and it's that whole thing where I have not debates, but there will be other people who'll be like, I use Entreport, it's so much better. I use Salesforce, it's this. It's Infusionsoft is great. All this sort of you have these debates, but every single system will have its bugs as well, and that's what I think people sort of like. Oh, Infusionsoft didn't do this, and it kept but then they'll go to another system and they realize, well, this system isn't perfect as well. It's got bugs and issues and all that. I mean,
it's funny. I've got a really good friend of mine who's a software developer, and I've asked him to come on the podcast, so he's agreed to come on for me because we want to talk about exactly that kind of thing, because I've had some really interesting conversations with him about why that happens, and computer software, phones, the whole works and jerks is becoming far more common these days, so the pace of development of a lot of this software is picking up, which means that they don't get the chance to bug test it as well, and the common thing, Windows was it Windows 8 that they released, and there was just huge problems with it, and really quickly after they released Windows 8.1, because a lot of software companies, in particular bigger software companies, are taking that attitude now of, we'll release it and we'll just let the people tell us what's wrong, because at the moment, even at Infusionsoft, they're developing a whole other platform, and they've got their platform that
I continue to use, which is the older version. No one can see me do the older version. No one can see me do
Well, hopefully if our camera hasn't stopped working, the YouTube people will be able to see that.
They're bringing out a new Infusionsoft.
Yeah.
And I know that will eventually get to a point where it will be a fantastic platform. But right now, I go, no, I'm not putting my clients on it because it is way too buggy and I'm not ready to put up with the bugs. So it's just waiting, but they know, like, people will tell them what the problems are and they'll develop it and they'll change it and fix it.
Yeah, of course.
It's just...
And I mean, the reality is it's, there's so many different combinations out there. So as part of what I've done, I don't know whether you've seen me posting multiple posts about it on YouTube, on LinkedIn or whatever, but I've had to learn to build computers basically as part of what I've been doing over the last few years, and the combinations of potential hardware alone, let alone then software that runs that hardware, drivers and bits and pieces, and then the operating system that you want to put on there, and then what software you're going to run with it. Like, what a lot of people don't realise or never ever think of is that even if they're buying computers from Dell, for example, I had a client ask me, they just said, oh look, we buy everything through, it was either Dell or HP, one of those, and they said, oh, can you just jump on their website for us and have a look at, give us a recommendation on what you would spec for a computer based on what they would, they allow us to do. And we'll ignore the fact that the website's just incredibly confusing to start with, but but it's confusing because there's so many possible combinations, and then for a software company to be able to test all that, it'd just be impossible, And then of course you've got the user error. So like you're saying before, you limit what certain people can do, because we're not all as up to date with software and how things work and all the rest of it. And that's fine and fair enough, but by the same token, you have to kind of manage that a little bit as well, don't you? You can't just let everyone run loose in your system, otherwise it'd be a nightmare.
And a lot of the times I find what then happens is, so one of the bigger clients we were training, and then they can see what can be done, and then they want more, and they're sort of like, wow, we've only scratched the surface, and you're sort of like, yep, there's a lot more we can do, but just use this and get this right before
you've seen what these computer things can do, right?
And you just sort of like, and then they they'll come back and they'll be like, we need to change this process because we've had someone and it doesn't fit the mold for them. And I go, out of your 500 customers, how many people does it not fit the mold for? And they'll be like 2. So they want to change an entire process for 2 people, and you sort of go, well, it's not. If your mold is working for 498 of them, don't change it for these 2 people. We can accommodate them, but it's sort of going.
Don't mess with the entire system.
You're going. Yes, we can change it, but it's going to cost you a lot more. And it's sort of, well, if it's just not fitting just a little bit for these 2 people, we can give them a phone call.
So I guess there needs to be then too some flexibility in the system to some extent. You obviously to accommodate most or the vast majority of your clients, and then be able to say, okay, well, we need, obviously this isn't working, so we need to be able to do something different for these guys. And
that's the thing, is nothing is set in stone. In the sense of, even at the beginning, I think people get really worried about, say you've got your customer lifecycle and your marketing automation side of things, people are sort of like, oh, the email's not right, it's not, it's not doing the right thing. It's like, well, we can change it. It's not pen to paper framed, we're not mounting it on their wall. It's something and test and do other things with. It's not the end of the world if it's not right.
Okay.
So it's all and throughout that whole process, if they're sort of going, templates change, we need to upload. That's right.
I mean, that's got to change with your business as well.
Exactly. And it's just making sure that you find those systems that allow those changes, because this is what I find with a lot of the free systems is people will spend a lot of time implementing them, and they're free, which is great. And then they reach a threshold and it starts charging, and they're getting charged, $20 a month, $30 depending on size and companies, and it goes up for this platform. And then they might have another sales pipeline system over here that they're connecting it to, and that's free to a certain point. And then they've set all this up and they're connecting all these programs, and then every program starts to charge because they start reaching a threshold. and then they outgrow these systems, and then they don't want to leave because they've spent so much time and money implementing all these systems that they don't want one program that does it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very sort of, if right from the start, if people are ever thinking of implementing systems, make sure it's something that can scale with you and that talks to other programs. That's a big one in anything. In the presentations I do is, if you're thinking of implementing anything in your business nowadays, make sure it talks. Even if this is like custom websites, they're great as long as your web developers can make that talk to other programs. Otherwise, it's just, you've got data sitting over in one point where it's not talking to anything, and you need it to come across. And that sort of, it's, as long as it's got an open API and it's got, we can put something in there, great. Otherwise, don't implement it.
Yeah. So we run into the same problem with CAD systems, and because I guess because CAD's really matured, these systems are, most people think AutoCAD, right? So like 2D drawings and things like that. But these days there's 3D drawing packages. There's say half a dozen really popular ones out there that everyone sort of knows in the industry, that knows about, and somebody will be working in one, and then they outgrow that system, or their business change tack a little bit, and they have to do something slightly different in their CAD system, and for whatever reason their original cheap one won't do that. So the same deal. Then they have to go to the new one, and they go, oh, how do we get all this information out of here into the new one? Well, I'm sorry, you can't. I've had to have that tough conversation with a few people. I mean, there's always tricks and ways around it, but you end up spending so much time and money and effort, and like you say, people look at that and go, oh, it's too hard, I don't want to, so then that stunts the growth of their business. And we touched on this when we were setting up, that it's one of those things, you just got to spend the money up front. You just have to do the right thing
and that's and I mean, my views changed from over the years of starting my business. I did used to do a lot for free, and it is great. You recommend all the stuff for free.
You've got no money.
But it is now for businesses that are looking, it's also about budgeting in those little bit extras, because a lot of the time they'll have an idea and they'll want it done, and I can go, yes, but we need this extra program to do it, and that extra program is $20 a month, or it is possible, but it's an extra so and so, and then that's when people are sort of like, oh, I wasn't really, I thought. They always have this thing where they think one program will do everything.
No.
And you're sort of like, it does a lot, but when you start thinking outside the box, it can go outside the box, which is great, because you want any program to go outside the box, but it needs something to latch onto.
At the very least, an add-on or something like that.
And that's a lot of the time, we use things, we love Zapier. Zapier has been sort of going, yes, we can do it, but we need this program to be able to do it. And it's,
So there's a couple of things there that we touched on going through that, is just the first one being, you mentioned right at the start that you do a lot of work with, or you can do a lot of work with individuals or small businesses, a couple of people, one-man bands of 2 or 3 people. When you're in that stage of your business, everything's hectic, everything's flat out. You never sleep, you don't know which way to go, what to do, all that sort of stuff. So if you come into somebody and say, or if somebody approaches you and says, hey, look, we're flat out, we need to organise this better, how do you go about, typically speaking, those people don't really have the information on the clients that we're talking about here. How do you go about capturing that information, or getting them to start capturing that information?
That's where it starts with that basic customer life cycle, breaking down the stages of how the customer comes in, how we convert them, what we then do after for them, whether you want to get testimonials or feedback and then referrals. Sort of breaking down that process and starting with that as the foundation of. And
that's something you sit down with your client and work out what exactly.
And it is amazing. I mean, I've been running webinars and it is based around that, breaking down that customer life cycle. And even bigger companies are sort of going, oh, I've never heard of the customer life cycle. What's the customer life cycle? And you're like, oh my God. And it's the whole thing of going, do you ask them for testimonials? No, we don't ask anyone for testimonials. Have you ever asked your current clients for referrals? No, don't do that. And I think people get a bit scared that it's impersonal by automating it, but it might be that you set a task to ask them. so that it is something that you're doing personally, but you're being reminded to actually ask them. So that it is something that you're doing personally, but you're being reminded to actually do it.
Yeah. So you can set your system up so that it sends notifications to you
Yes.
as opposed to your client. So then you can sit down and go, oh, right, okay, well, I've got to email Janet today and ask her.
I've got 10 people this week to give a call
Okay.
and make sure that their service has gone well, and if they had any questions or queries, or and then the next week I'll give them another call and see if they've got any referrals or whatever the process is.
So the system is just as much about automating what's happening within your business as it is automating what your business is sending out, the information that's going out. Okay.
Definitely.
So, to me, I'd sit down and think, oh, geez, I don't have any of that information. Do you find, like, what do you what's your worst thing that you normally find when you come into a new client who want to use your services? What's the biggest trap that you find most clients are doing?
The most clients are doing is they're holding bits and pieces of information across different programs.
Okay.
And then their staff have different, again, they'll have, an Excel sheet of their best clients or something, and that's the staff hat. And I always think that is just it's not a good idea, because if that staff member leaves, they're taking an Excel sheet of 1,000 clients with them that isn't in any system because they've just kept it on their own computer.
Or even if they're just on holidays. That's one of the things I used to find all the time when I was an employee, and being a contractor and working on multiple different sites across the place. You come into a site and the key person you need to talk to is having a long weekend, or and for it became really evident doing FIFO work. So you were in on site when somebody else was out off site, and you only had a 1 or 2 day exchange. Evident doing FIFO work. So you were in on site when somebody else was out off site, and you only had a 1 or 2 day exchange time where you could get that information out of them, that kind of thing.
And so that's something it's held in different spots, and no one really knows a process.
Right.
It's just sort of done.
Yeah.
And then there usually is a process there, but it's not known. It's just something that's been taught, and Chinese whispers.
Well, that's the other thing, right? Is so by implementing what you're talking about, you're not just, I guess, automating a handful of processes. You're centralising information. You're implementing standardisation, I guess, across the board for how that information is captured and then handled, and you're implementing a life cycle of how you handle with that client and what you do with that client, and then from that you can mine a heap of data to say, this is how long it took us to get the client, how much it cost us, what money they spent with us, and then potentially even by the sounds of it, how much referral work you get out of that client, that kind of thing.
Definitely. Okay. And it's all very important, and getting that across to people is how important that information and that data is, and having it in one spot. Because it's just, I think it's never really looked at until the business starts to slow. When things are just rolling through the door, people are like, our marketing's great. We don't know what we do, but it's fantastic. And it's even businesses that might be word of mouth, is sort of making sure that, if you go networking, you're actually putting that information somewhere central to have in a system that you can call on again, because we don't remember everyone that we've ever met. But it's just knowing that it's there when we need it, and they remember you. Something that is set, because we all get busy, but if you know every day that there's something that you need to do, and it's only with your sales pipeline, you're only talking to the people that are hot for converting, that's going to be a productive day, instead of wasting your time on people that don't even remember you. So it's knowing that and putting that in place as to when people actually want to convert and converting them.
Okay. Excellent. So you basically, you started off, you're talking about automating some processes and things like that, but realistically this is a whole business approach to handling your clients and ensuring that they get the level of service that they deserve, getting emails at the right times, making phone calls at the right times,
Yeah.
you getting a reminder, because I know that was one of my biggest problems for a while, is that I was so busy doing so many things that I could never remember who I had to call, and I'd be a day late on a phone call or something like that because I'd be so busy trying to do one thing and then forget that I was meant to call somebody else about something else and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of manual systems out there to keep track of that. The old if you follow any of the big business superstars, air quotes for our listeners, on Instagram or LinkedIn or any of those social media platforms, that's their thing. Do the to-do list. Sit down at the start of your day and do the to-do lists and prioritise and blah blah blah. And so this system effectively helps you do a lot of that as well.
Yeah.
So
definitely in that sales opportunity area, making sure that you're talking to the people that need to be spoken to.
Yeah, excellent. So the other big question then is, where do you see it going? As somebody who's in the industry, because that's
scary. That's what it's great, the advancements and all this, and it is. I think people talk about AI and how great that's going to be, and I go, yes, it will be, but most people can't get their Excel sheets straight in their business. Like, if they're not implementing a basic customer relationship management system, how is the next step going to be an AI system when all their data is all over the place?
Yep.
Like, you still need that information, and you still need it to look at something. When people are running different systems and companies aren't on board, it's sort of going, it's not going to happen tomorrow because businesses don't move that fast.
Definitely.
As much as we want them to, it just doesn't happen tomorrow.
So do you see a future where this kind of thing that you're working on now is an essential part of staying in business? Like your clients, I mean, with the combination of automation and reminders and all the time saving that they're getting from these systems that you're implementing, have to see a reasonable growth in their profit for their money time that they're investing in this. Are any of your clients that have been through the system sort of going, how did we ever do this prior, or we can do so much more and we're going to make so much more money out of this?
The sad thing is the number of times, and this is bad, but also something that I think some people have to realise, is the number of meetings I've sat in and told, we can take that information that someone's entered over here and put it in this system over here. And some person has gone, but that's my job. I go, what? I'm just like, we'll find something more that you can do. We'll find something more that you can do. Like, there's, it's...
Well, it's that old thing, like you say, people are so scared about AI and, it's going to replace our jobs. And I mean, self-driving cars are probably one of the biggest examples of that, everyone's going to be out of a job. But, when you look at the Industrial Revolution, for example, to dig a mine pit, you used to have 1,000 people, out there with picks and shovels and wheelbarrows and, pushing carts up rail tracks and things like that. You go and have a look at a mine pit now and there's a dozen pieces of machinery driving around in it, that are doing way more work than that 1,000 people with picks and shovels ever did. But everyone's still got a job, and there's way more of us floating around now than there were back when they were doing it by hand.
I think it's that whole thing of they're doing something that is more. I mean, I used to do a bit for mining and even going underground, and you'd be in this sort of room and there's one guy monitoring 3 I think they're called boggers.
Boggers,
and he's driving them, all different levels, all different things. It's all automated. He's monitoring them, he's set it, he's driven them. And I go, well, that used to be more people doing that in a more dangerous position, in a more, all this sort of stuff, to one person monitoring all of this. And you're going, well, now you're making more money. And yes, it's not great for employment, but then those people move up and they train and they do more in the business to make more money. They do something more valuable.
I mean, at the risk of sounding very impersonal, you repurpose them to do something better for you, to do expand their skills. And we face the same predicament with a lot of the stuff that we work on, is that we work on automating a lot of stuff, or improving things. So, a good example might be that mine sites in particular a good example might be that mine sites in particular are really, really bad for this. Not so much food processing and things, but a pump might leak or break down every 2 or 3 shifts, because they run 24/7. They're a continuous operation. So a pump breaks down once a week and it spits what they call it slurry on mine sites. It spits slurry everywhere, and it's somebody's job to have to go out and hose that down. So you fix that pump and it runs for 3 months between maintenance cycles. All of a sudden there's no need for somebody to go out there and hose that down. But instead of doing a ridiculous, menial, stupid task that shouldn't even exist, they get to then go and actually improve on a system somewhere or do something else. So it's food processing is a lot worse because robotics are coming into it a lot more. So where there were people taking stuff off a production line, for example, and putting it onto a pallet or putting it into a box or something like that. There's a lot of machinery coming in now that will automate a lot of that process. So yes, we do put people out of work, and it is a bad side of what we do, but by the same token
and it's not going to be instant. That's it's not all of a sudden all these people are going to be gone. It's a process, and that's something. I think people do get scared about AI and such, and it's not going to happen tomorrow. Somebody still needs, at the end of the day, somebody still needs to maintain the system, is what I find, right? And there's no better person to do that than the person that knew how to do it before the automation was in place, because, like we were talking about earlier, things go wrong, right? And when it goes wrong, and especially with software, you might need to do stuff manually for a little while. So you're not necessarily ever going to put that person out of a job as such. You just have to retrain, do stuff manually for a little while. So you're not necessarily ever going to put that person out of a job as such. You just have to retrain them as they implement new systems. And I'm sure when Excel came out and it could do all this great stuff, people were worried, well, it takes 3 of us to do that on calculators at the moment, but there's still plenty of accountants out there, and still plenty of people crunching numbers, just doing it with Excel now instead of calculators. Yeah, but they're doing better and bigger things. That's the whole. They're pulling the data together, and they're seeing it across what would have taken weeks to pull together. It's just sort of like, well, we can see it live now because we've got it.
The other thing that really amazes me that no one ever really sort of seems to think of is, so many people out there are doing these jobs that they hate. Like they're soul destroying. Data entry. I've met a few data entry people who absolutely love it. Like that's their thing. All right, so I get that there are horses for courses, and people like to do all sorts of things that I personally might find boring, or the vast majority of people would find completely not interesting at all. And that's awesome. That's what makes the world go round. But so many people are just going through the paces, going to work to do their thing. If they get replaced by a piece of software that's doing their job for them, and all of a sudden there is actually no need for them because somebody else can run the software and they have to go and do something else. The way I see it is they should be looking at it as an opportunity. Like most people go, oh well, I've been doing data entry for 20 years. I might as well just go and find another data entry job which I hate, which doesn't pay well. Which, go and start your own business, or go back to school and do something with yourself, and have a look at doing something different. Learn about AI. Like if AI is going to be the future, and have a look at doing something different. Learn about AI. Like if AI is going to be the future, learn about it.
And that's, I think, I look at it and go, I guess in a bigger thing is we're living longer, we're working longer, we might as well do something that we like for at least the majority of the time. It's sort of going, your career's going to be a long time, try and make it interesting.
When you think about that, that's a scary prospect in itself. So you leave school at 17 and you work until you're at least 65 or 70, unless you hit the lotto or something really lucky like that. And never have to worry about money again, but most of us are going to be in it for 50 years. yeah, you might as well do something fun.
And that's it. And I mean, even in the evolution of my business, it's changed in the last 5 years from where it started to where it is now. And I was lucky enough to be educated back in high school when coding in high school was not common. We were one of the schools that was very already doing it before lots of other places had it. We had a very good IT school. I was lucky in being able to have that foundation. I do not code. I do not pretend to code because I suck at other languages.
Yeah, well, that's
I was like, I learned German. I tried coding. You know,
like I say, that's a podcast to come. That's what my mate does, and that's what we're going to see and have a chat about. Because
it's given me a solid foundation to sort of understand how all of this is working and how it's connecting and how we can make it connect.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't. I make staff do that, but you know, it's not something that it was good to have that knowledge.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's the cross-referencing of that knowledge, you know.
Yeah.
So like the data entry person, or the thing that really amazes me, and so my background is I left school and became a sheet metal worker. I did an apprenticeship in sheet metal and worked 10 years in the industry. Got interested in the CAD CAM side of things, and the machining, computer-aided machining and CNC machining and things like that, and ran heaps of different CNC machines over the years, and sort of looked at the CAM side of it, so the computer-aided machining side of it, the software and how you program the machines to do what they do, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I kind of progressed into the drafting side of things then, and then moved across into engineering and whatnot. And what I find is from when I was in workshops, I can remember guys that I used to work with in workshops who were just labourers, in air quotes, that's all they ever thought of themselves as. But because they'd been somewhere doing something for so long and they were just a labourer, they've learnt that system inside and out. And you come onto sites, even today, you go to come to a new client site to do a job somewhere, and you ask them a question and they go, oh, we'll get Jimmy over here because Jimmy's been here for 20 years and he knows exactly the answer to that question and can tell you, and people undervalue themselves and that knowledge, that background knowledge, like where they've come from and the information that they've gathered over the years. So, you say you're replacing a job for so a data entry person or something, for example, right? They go, oh, I've just been a data entry person. No. You know the business systems, like so many people undervalue that knowledge that they've got. It doesn't, it's across the board. I see it everywhere.
I did it myself when I first started my business. You give away all that knowledge and you're like, oh, everyone knows it. Like, it's just common. Like, they know how to...
Surely everyone knows C++.
And that's it. You're just like, easy. Easy. And so you just give it away for free. And then you're like, why aren't I making any money? But it's throughout that whole period, it's the learning, it's the evolution of it all, because it changes so quickly. That's what's crazy about it, is you've got to stay up to date, and that's why, I mean, even in my businesses, we didn't spread out into the social media marketing, Google ads sort of things, because that is a monster in itself. And staying up to date with that constantly, because Facebook will run an update and be like, hey, this isn't working anymore, we've changed it, and making sure that you're on top of that is just a
full-time job in itself. And
I don't know if you've seen or anyone has seen, there's a guy called Scott Brinker, and he runs a blog called Chief Martech, and I believe he works for HubSpot or consults with HubSpot, which is another sort of customer relationship management system.
The name sounds really familiar.
And he puts together every year, there's this big conference, and he puts together the marketing technology super graphic. And it is, I've followed him for years, and it really started out as this one page, few icons in each sort of section. You got your e-commerce, you've got your analytics, you've got your CRM, and there'll be a few icons in each of the things. This super graphic is now huge, and I print it out when I do my presentations, and it is it'd be, you know,
this is of all the companies who are working in those fields.
All the different programs and things that are out there.
Yeah. I've seen one of those for the food production, but it's it's one of those that most people may have seen it, where it's these seven food companies, whatever it is.
So all these and people are constantly developing, and I try and stay up to date. But then I'll go and meet a client, and they're like, "We use this system," or "Have you heard of this system?" I'm like, "I can't." There are thousands of programs. Yes. Like I'll go and look it up and know exactly what it does and how we can connect to it. Yeah. But there are so many, and so trying to stay up to date with that landscape is obviously a full-time job, and then some. And it is, and so it's sort of, and that was one of the reasons of sort of picking Infusionsoft, was because I know what works with it, I know what's been developed for it, I know how it connects to other programs and how we can develop it to make it even better.
Yeah, and worst case scenario, you can do something custom to make it work.
That's it.
Yeah.
So it's a crazy world, and so trying to stay up to date with it all is it just takes a lot of time. And so even implementing it in these businesses, it's not a tomorrow thing. We're not going to be putting people out of work and doing things as soon as they engage me.
And even we find the same thing in consulting engineering.
Yeah. And it is, I mean, one of my clients she'll be going on maternity leave, and she's really just like, we need to automate as much as possible. I need to still be able to see what's happening across the business.
Jeez, that's keen.
And that's the whole thing of, I do so much, data entry and pulling information together, that we need to have the business intelligence to be able to tell me what's happening. Yeah. And that's really important. I mean, even when I sit at my desk, I have my business intelligence dashboard, and I can watch the trends, and that's when you actually start to see things if something's not going right. There was something wrong with my website, and it was because I was seeing it sort of going, what's happening? Like, why all of a sudden I started to get all these, we'd just put something in wrong, and we started to get all these bots that come and submit forms on your website. And that's it. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I was like, this isn't right. So I was able to sort of see it because I'm watching it live and go, well, what's happening? We need to fix this problem.
Yeah, well, I mean, a really good example of that. So one of the things I find in my industry, and I don't know, maybe this is, working with you might be a good idea, but a lot of the work that I get is word of mouth, right? Mm-hmm. So somebody has referred me to somebody else because we've got a fairly tight community, like fairly closed community with what we do. Mm-hmm. And that's excellent, but it means slow business growth. And the reality is that we need a website. If somebody is looking for services along the things, along the lines of what we provide, you need a website, you need something out there for people to look at and all the rest of it. But for us, it's not a super high priority, mm-hmm. right? Like, it's there, and I've did it maybe 12 months ago, and updated it to whatever the latest trend was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, it changes so quickly, and I do keep a bit of an eye on it, and I use it to post blogs on and that kind of thing. But the other day I did something where I sent something out, and it just had the C3DC
mm-hmm.
letters on it for my company, and I thought, I wonder what they get if they Google that, because I haven't done that for a while. When I first started out and I was trying to cultivate business, and you want to know. One of the things that I read about was you need to know what your what do they call it? Your online identity is, or whatever. So you need to see if somebody you interact with turns around and Googles you, what are they going to find?
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully for me, it's all just boring stuff like photography and motorcycles and what have you. But with the business side of things, I sort of thought, I wonder what they see if they Google C3DC.
Yeah.
And I did, and it comes up with this site may have been hacked. So one of the new things that Google's doing is if your site's being compromised at any point in time, your site has been attacked and some malicious software was put on there, we've removed that through our systems, but we have to let you know that this has been done. So it's all been sorted out, like more or less immediately, as far as I understand it. Right. What they didn't tell me was that if Google picked up on that activity at that time, that happened, and then that goes under your website, and then you have to try and remove that, right? So, like you say, monitoring these things is super critical, because I always kind of thought, we've done a website, it's there, I'll update it once every 12 or 18 months or something, as the new trend in web pages comes along, and just use the newest WordPress template or whatever it is. And no, it's really, you can't. You really have to monitor what's going on with you.
And you have to monitor a lot, even in the sense of, say we're building the custom bridges between programs, is if we're not monitoring that, and because if we're not paid to, we don't, no offense anyone, it's one of those things where they don't notice a problem until they stop getting emails, or they stop sort of going, we're not getting this report again.
Well, I nearly died when I saw that this site.
And you go, well, how long has that been happening for?
Exactly.
So it's that whole thing, and I love them to death. And they'll be like, we're not getting the report, and I'll go back in, and they're like, well, you've got no one in the campaign, and you've got no one in the campaign because the bridge broke. Because the other program that we were connecting to ran an update, and we weren't monitoring it. We didn't know. And that's the whole thing of going, you need to monitor those things, which is great with having the dashboards and the reports, because you're able to see that something's not right. You can sort of see your daily ins and outs, but as soon as something drops or something ridiculously goes off the edge, is you can see it and go, we need to fix that.
And for smaller businesses and the people who are just getting started with you, I'm imagining that's not a super complex process to check those things either, is it? Because they're only going to have a few things in there, so it'd just be, have they got an app that you can open on your phone, or is it PC only?
They can pull up the reporting dashboard anywhere. It's just on website, hosted. So they can pull it up. It's no biggie.
Dashboard initially for anyone starting out, I suppose even big businesses starting out, there's only going to be a handful of fields in there, and then over time it'll grow and get a little bit more complex. But obviously,
and then even with a lot of the processes and things that we put in place, there's always, I make it a point to put together manuals and training and videos on what is actually happening throughout this process. So down the track, if someone leaves that has all that information, the new person can be like, okay, let's watch this video and find out what this campaign actually does, what forms I need to fill in to actually trigger the automation.
And for a lot of people out there who may not realise it, that's actually, that dashboard is really the AI bit of AI, isn't it? Because that's the automated intelligence that's actually going and getting the right information from the right places and putting it in an easy to read graph.
And that's what is amazing, is because at the moment, say a lot of people are going to these other platforms. They might be running ads across Google, across Facebook, across, if they're a property company, realestate.com, they might be running, and then they're running all this other information and metrics. What they're then doing is logging into each of these portals, pulling out the information, putting it in their Excel sheet, and then what they're then doing is logging into each of these portals, pulling out the information, putting it in their Excel sheet, and then looking at the data and going, okay, well, this is cost per conversion of this ad, and this is how many leads we got, and this is all this, and having all of that information. What we're then able to do is go, let's use, I think we use Supermetrics, to be able to plug in your Google Analytics and your Facebook ad portal and all that sort of thing to pull out that information on the go. To then put put it into either Google Sheets and then display it on your business intelligence dashboard. And depending on what sort of data they want, so if they want it to be held and go back years and years and years, we'll put it into Google Analytics. If they just want the live information, we'll send it straight through to the dashboard and display it how they want to see it. And that's a whole other thing. Like I'm not a data analyst. I did not do well in that subject at university. That is not my thing.
That's why we love computer programmers,
that's it.
software developers, because
I'll
they're
employ
out
a data analyst, and we can go from that.
Awesome software that does all this stuff for us.
Because it is, I can pull out the information, but I don't know how to display it. What makes it actually meaningful to a business to actually look at and go, oh, well, this. Even ones which are great are sort of with some of our clients that get a lot more international leads and things, is going, well, let's pull up a map and have that as going, where are our clients located? Where are they coming from? Where's our traffic? And seeing how to do that across the world, not just in your local neighbourhood, or if it is just in your local neighbourhood, just seeing it in that sort of area.
Yeah. So I guess somebody that comes to you, they don't have to have any of their ducks in a row. They can actually be herding cats effectively.
Yeah.
And you can help them
yeah.
turn them into ducks and get them in a row
and they
and
don't
say,
need, they don't, yeah.
turn them into ducks and get them in a row and say,
they don't need all the bells and whistles. That's something that you know, you might not need the business intelligence dashboards, and that's fine. It's great to have because we can monitor stuff, but we don't need to implement it. I can go, here is a $130 a month version of Infusionsoft, go for your life.
Yeah.
I don't like doing that because any program it can be a monster when you get in there and you're not sure how to sort of set it up and where to enter data and how to set up custom fields.
And more importantly, what data to enter.
Exactly.
So you can help guide somebody basically through this entire process of turning their cats into ducks and then getting them into a row, as far as what it takes to... So you don't necessarily do an advertising campaign for them, do you?
No.
Yeah. So you're saying, right...
I will work with their marketer, like this, if they have a social media marketing team or another sort of agency, I'll work with them, no worries, because a lot of the time they will lead ads to a call to action, which will then come in.
That's where you take over.
That's when we take over and go, here's the campaign that they're running through, which still does involve some marketing, copywriting, all that side of things. But a lot of the time, maybe even the marketing or the agency might do all of that. We just put it together, create that sort of side of things, and build it, make it work, to be able to spit out the right information at the end. So we work with them through that whole process and advise on the other programs that would be suited for the business. So if they are looking for, I mean, a lot of people aren't, they already have an accounting package, which is mostly QuickBooks or Xero.
Yeah.
Or they might want a project management program because they don't have anything, they're running through emails or done. Whereas Asana is great for sort of smaller teams, I do anyway. But yeah, there's a mix of all the programs, but sort of by understanding what's needed, we're able to put the right programs in place and make things talk to each other with the right programs.
So just getting back to sort of where you see all this going in the future then, so when you say AI is going to be the future, how is AI going to handle this sort of stuff?
I don't know if it will, but it won't. It might. And again, it's not going to happen tomorrow, so I haven't put too much thought into it.
But I mean, as somebody for instance, with what we do, the next obvious step for us is maybe VR, virtual reality, or AR, augmented reality, in displaying what we produce, for example, right? So we do a 3D model of something in a plant with augmented reality. We can put a pair of glasses on somebody, walk them out into their plant, and they can see where we're going to put things and where pipes are going to run and where new platforms are going to go and all that sort of stuff. So for us, I think, we see AR and VR as being the next big thing coming. Mm-hmm. Like you say, it's not overnight. It's not going to be, we are sort of tinkering with it a little bit. We've done a couple of virtual reality jobs now for people, and, I talk more and more to people who are interested in it and want to know about it. But, as for what you're doing, where do you see the next logical step?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's just important at the moment because there are so many businesses not doing anything.
So the next logical step is starting.
Yeah, that's and I'm not great at sales, and I hate being, even though I have my own business and I sell. It's one of those things where I'm not that person, even though I want to be. I don't want to be that person that's like, if you don't do this, even though I want to be, I don't want to be that person that's like, if you don't do this, someone else will, and they are doing it. And it's one of my, I don't know whether I should say, it's one of my things where if I go and pitch to a company and they're like, no, we're not there yet, I make it a point to find their competitor and put it in their business. And the number of times I've done that, and I go, well, you missed out.
Missed the boat,
That's it. Because
the thing, I mean, even if you're not actively doing that, right? So I feel the same thing about 3D scanning, for example, right? I see 3D scanning is, in one form or another, going to replace tape measures. in the not too distant future too. I sort of think in the 5 to 10 years. Or actually, no, I kind of thought that about 5 years ago, and it's not kind of panned out that way. But it's fast evolving. So I started with 3D scanning, 3 years ago, I think. It'd be 4 years ago now. We bought our scanner, and in that time, the growth, the amount of people who know about 3D scanning alone is just gone off the charts, right? So when I started, I'd ring people and talk to them and say,
same.
And they'd be like, never heard of it, or we saw a demo at a conference somewhere one day, and and now I'm getting phone calls and people saying, hey, look, somebody's asked us to do 3D scanning. So this is the flip side of it, I guess, is that eventually clients come to expect it. So where I deal typically with a lot of engineering and architectural type firms, and then they deal with the end client, what's happening, or what I'm seeing a lot more of, is that the client is saying, hey, look, we had a project done here by some guys a little while back, and they used 3D scanning and it went smooth, like it was faster and cheaper and blah, blah. We'd like to do that again. Or some guys a little while back, and they used 3D scanning and it went smooth, like it was faster and cheaper and blah, blah. We'd like to do that again. Or a client's heard about it somewhere, a facilities manager on site or something's heard about it and demands it and says, hey, look, we want that. So what do you think that maybe there's a chance that, so say Google's and Amazon's and things are obviously way across what you're doing, like their data management. I got an email from, what did I do the other day? I needed to buy a hard drive for my computer. So I went onto the website of the people that I normally buy my computer components off, had a look at the hard drives, at the prices and things like that, and went, yep, okay, that's what I've got to buy. I've got to go and get that in a couple of days. And the next day, or that afternoon, or the next day or whatever, I got an email saying, hey, look, we saw that you were looking at these things on our website. Here's some other things that people were looking at. So that's all what you're doing, what you're talking about,
and it's that whole thing, I think, where a lot of businesses think it's out of reach for them. They think that's the Kogans of the world and the JB Hi-Fis, and they're doing all that stuff. I can't possibly afford it.
And I'm imagining that there's no one. This company, this computer components company, UMart, for those out there who know it, but
they've really upped their email marketing at the moment.
Haven't they just? It's a little bit annoying.
It's a lot, and you've got very close to cutting them off.
I'm imagining that they haven't employed somebody suddenly at UMart to sit down and monitor what's happening on their website and then frantically send out emails to people, this has got to be automated systems. And obviously Amazon do the same thing, with Amazon coming to Australia recently. I signed up with them as well to have a look. Email marketing is just going leaps. Recently I signed up with them as well to have a look. Email marketing is just going leaps and bounds ahead, and small businesses are using it all over the place. And
the thing is, and I think it even dawns on me again, sometimes I sort of think like, email marketing again with the emails and the sort of thing, but it works in my own business, and that's the whole thing. Is people are like, does it actually work? And I'm like, yes, it does, because there'll be something I'll send out. I sent some emails out because I did a massive, because you've got to watch your emails. You've got to make sure that there's high delivery rates and they're getting open and engagement. Otherwise, the Googles and the Outlooks of the world will tarnish your domain.
Yeah.
So it is a process to stay with a clean email list and get those high delivery rates and the deliverability of the emails. Because there's inbox placement and there's spams and unsubscribes and all sorts of different things that can get in your way. So I did a massive sort of one of I was running some webinars and I went, okay, out of the whole list that I send my reminders to, if certain people don't open them, they're being segmented. I'm going to segment them out and they're going to get a tag, which is something in Infusionsoft to be able to segment them. Then what I did with those, I think it was sort of 150 people, is go, okay, you're coming through a nurture campaign. And the gist of this campaign was, if you're not opening my emails, I don't want you. I'm cutting you out.
Yeah.
Because that ruins my delivery rates of all the other emails. So the 500 people that open and engage with my webinars and did that, they're now on a list, and I have my engagement rates have skyrocketed because all those emails are going to engage people, and there's no one in there that didn't open a bunch, because Outlook and Gmail, look at, if there's 200 people that don't open emails, then that goes, and if there's 200 people that don't open emails, then that goes and tells Gmail that your email isn't important, and they're going to put it in another inbox in for all these other people.
Okay.
So it's something to constantly stay up to date on.
Yeah.
And so what I then did with those people was pretty much send out a campaign sort of going, hey, you haven't engaged, this is why, wrote a blog on it, sort of, if you haven't seen it, blah, 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 email, and if they didn't open any of those, didn't do anything, I was like, you're out, you're done, you're gone.
That's really interesting, because I got an email from somebody a little while back that said, hey, we noticed you haven't opened emails recently. That's fine. If you're not dealing with this, just click this button or something to unsubscribe, and or something like that. So something like, say we take Umart, at the moment they might have really good inbox placement because it's something that they've just started to do. Because I've shopped with the Umart for ages, and they really weren't on the ball with email marketing at all. You got the odd... I don't miss those days.
The odd email, but it was enough to know that they're still there, they're still running, that's where I'll go if I need something. Whereas now, it's going every day, more and more each day. And more of those emails for me are not getting opened.
So that's not necessarily a good thing. So what you want to do is not spam your clients with...
Unless they're engaging in emails, but that's when you want to segment them. Go, hey, if we've got 100 people that open every single email every day, then we will keep sending them an email every day. Whereas if we've got 500 people that are only opening a handful, let's move them down to only send a monthly email. And keep an eye on those numbers and those lists, and segment accordingly to make sure that your engagement rates are good. But because they do work, that's what I was sort of getting at, is I sent this whole campaign, and then I get a call from an old client who just sort of goes like, I saw this, we need you to come do this in our business.
Yeah, it's one of those...
We need that sort of thing, and I'm like, oh, email marketing does work. It was like, damn it.
That's what I preach, huh?
Which I'm not good at. But it does work. It's that sort of constant reminder of going, yep, that business is still there, they know their stuff.
And as a small business, as a starting out business, every single one of those phone calls to say, hey, we want you to come and do some work for us is absolutely critical. So anyway,
and it's amazing how it happens, even in the sense of I missed out on a lead because I was too slow. We were caught up in meetings, and I called them, and they're like, sorry, we're gone with another business. It happened so quickly. But I was like, look, we had a great conversation. I added them to my list. Things didn't go well with this other client, so they came on board with me. And it was just because I just stayed on top
in their mind.
Just giving them information that was valuable over time, that just sort of thing. And that's the sort of key with that, is making sure that the content is valuable, and by segmenting them and knowing where they've gone on your website and what they've looked at, you're able to sort of put something together that is good for them.
You can even break it down to the point where, say for instance, if one of your clients is maybe doing a blog and doing some video tutorials and maybe has some free ebooks or something on their website, you can break that list down to say, okay, well, these people are more interested in blogs, these people are more interested in video, these people are more interested in ebooks, and then you could maybe target them specifically with specific...
And even to the point, like, videos are great, using a program like Wistia. Embedding them on your site using Wistia, is you're able to know who's actually watched for how long.
Right. Is that anybody that logs into or comes to your website and looks, or is it only people who have a login or something?
No, so anyone. So it might sort of be, so take Infusionsoft, we've all got tracking scripts, so we can go, we might have an anonymous person come visit, and they might come visit for 1 second, or they might, and then, and you're like, go away, I don't want you. But then you might have a visitor that comes on for 5 minutes, and then they come on again for 10 minutes, and they're sort of slowly, but you still don't know who this person is, and then eventually they might sign up for something, and that's when you're able to see it matches all of that information to go, they came to your site 3 times over the last month, and then finally they booked an appointment with you or something. So you can see all that information.
Yeah, nice.
Which is valuable. And then you can add the automation on that. So once you've got their information, then you can go, and if they don't convert, but they subscribe to an ebook or whatever it is, or unlock to watch a video or whatever, then they might 2 months down the track come back and look at your frequently asked questions page. And that might just give you a flag, just a notification to go, hey, Joe Brown has come back to the website and looked at this thing. It might be worth giving him a call because he's got questions or he wants to know more information. And that's when you're picking up the phone to someone who's actually worth it, worth your time to pick up the phone to. Or even send out a personal, like an email, something. Yeah,
so it's one thing to implement this stuff initially just to gather the data. It's a whole nother thing that you actually have to then spend time to work out what data's valuable and action that data. So, bring people who are looking at the fact page, for example. Okay.
And making it, and I think something that it has to be good is making it easy for people to do stuff. Like, if you're offering free consultations or offering something, giving them a calendar time, not making it this hard sort of backwards forwards. When are you available? I don't know. I've got this. I'm in a different time zone.
Actually, one of my implemented a calendar system online, and I can't for the life of me, I can never remember the name of it because I've only used it a couple of times. But that sounds familiar.
Appointment call, schedule once, schedule, and that's another thing with any of these programs is. Make sure when you're implementing, there are bridges, like we can implement Zapier and that's great, but there are some programs that integrate natively. So stuff like Appointment Core and Schedule Once integrate natively to Infusionsoft. So you don't need an extra bridge, another piece of software to connect those two.
Okay. So you've mentioned that a couple of times about native integration, and we were talking earlier about migrating information from one piece of software or one location to another. Let's assume that there's some people out there who are listening who are starting out for themselves or want to start out for themselves, and they want to start down this path. And as we also mentioned, as a small business owner starting out, you've got no money and you have to do everything yourself. If somebody sort of says, okay, well, eventually I want to go down this path and we want to automate a lot of these processes and maybe get Infusionsoft and that kind of thing, how do they ensure that they're taking the right steps now to make that happen? So how do they check that this is something that's got an open API, for example? Because I understand what that means, but there are a lot of people who probably don't.
Usually there's something on the website that'll be like a little for developers or development or API or something, and usually it's in the bottom part of the website that's just sort of hidden.
Where it's got the contact us and other pages listed and all the rest of it's right down the very bottom.
And one of the other things, so I had a client come to me the other day and they were looking at, I can't remember the name of the platform, but it was something to run competitions, and they were like, oh, we're going to implement this, blah blah blah, we're not sure if it integrates. And I was like, let's pull up Zapier, pull it up, plug in the two programs that you need to talk to each other, or just the program that you're going to use, and make sure that it's in a platform like that. So your Wicados or your Zapiers or whatever, if bridges have already been built around them, then you're pretty sure that that's gonna connect to what you need it to connect to. And so looking at that sort of stuff and seeing that there's something there helps immensely. But sometimes it just won't.
So is that something that people can do themselves? So when you say pull up Infusionsoft, they can go to the Infusionsoft website.
So pull up. So it's just sort of like go to Zapier, and you'll have so many ideas and things that you'll see of being like, wow, I can automate my entire life.
I'm never going to
it really is sort of like, oh my gosh, overwhelm, analysis paralysis. And it just sort of says like what is the program that you're wanting to connect to, and what is the other program that you're wanting to connect to. And if it's in that list and they have hundreds and hundreds, then you're pretty sure.
Pretty safe.
Yeah. Okay. And Zapier, and it depends on what you want. So something I read about the other day is you've got programs like Zapier that are based on triggers. So when something happens, so say you send an invoice in Xero, that's a trigger that's happening that you might want something else to happen in another program. So that's It's based on something happening in there. So it might be that a new lead comes in and you want that lead to trigger a proposal or something like it, that sort of thing. But that's based on an action. So other programs like PySync is a two-way connection that's constantly monitoring the data, so that if someone in accounts in Xero goes, oh, their address changed, we're just going to update the address in Xero. PySync's constantly monitoring that, and it just will sync across all the information into your CRM. So there's stuff. So it's constantly sort of up to date. across platforms.
And obviously, the same goes for any platform. So if you update it in your CRM, it'll update across into Xero. Or something
and PySync is relatively new, so they're still building out those bridges. But there's these people and these softwares that are building the bridges. So not often do we actually have to do custom-made bridges, but it's also knowing, and that's where it comes out in those scoping studies, is what is the actual information that has to be shared. Because sometimes that won't be covered in something like Zapier or one of these programs. It will need, you need an extra field that they haven't made available, and that's when you need to open it up a bit more and develop it.
Yeah. So a bridge, just to clarify this too, a bridge is something, a piece of software effectively that looks at one program's database and information and takes the relevant information and puts it across into another database or another program's database or information.
Or a Google Sheet or a...
wherever you want it.
Wherever you want it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So for all the people who just threw whatever it was that they had in their hand and, I don't have that, I've got the wrong programs, or is it the end of the world if somebody comes to you and says, look, we've been using this program, we've got all this information, how hard of a job is it to get it across?
I just think if you're using anything, pay for it. Like, I find it amazing. Reputable businesses that I think are reputable businesses and that do a lot of, they have a lot of clients, they're always free, and they still use the free version of Mailchimp, and you're sort of going can't you do $20 a month to actually do a little bit more with my data and do so that, and I find it's accountants and I love them. It's that whole thing where their process is very sort of, and accountants and lawyers, it's that whole thing where their process is very sort of, and accountants and lawyers, they bill for their time, a lot of them. So it's sort of going, you'll enter information into a basic PDF form that isn't going anywhere, and then they're re-entering that information in their system. I'm like, I don't want to pay you to do the data entry that I've already done for you. Why aren't you making this easier for me?
Yeah, but of course they want to charge you for that.
And so there's certain ones where they will use the free version. I'm like, just pay the tiny bit extra to get the logo taken off.
Like, you charge me $500.
You're just like,
$500 an hour, and you're using the free Mailchimp.
I don't know why it gets to me. I'm just like, because Mailchimp is great, but in the sense of it is free, and so even in our community of people, we will use free platforms to test.
Yeah.
So if new client comes to me and we've got, a database of 2,000 contacts that aren't really warm or aren't, we've never contacted before, where do I put them? Mailchimp. And I cleanse the list through Mailchimp, and anyone who reports as spam, does anything through there, that's Mailchimp's problem. We're not going to import the bad data into our good system.
Yeah.
So that's where we use those free systems.
And is that so? Is that like a database file or some? All these programs that you're talking about that collect all this data and this information. Is it just a simple database file that you can export from all of these programs, or is there anything that you've come across where you can't, if somebody's been using, say for instance, the free version of some software, some automated marketing software or something for argument's sake, and they've got all this database of all their clients and all this stuff that they've done,
it might be that but in our testing sort of things, if we're running a campaign through Mailchimp to warm up the things, we're actually leading them across into like a call to action, which is a web for like a landing page that will send the information to Infusionsoft. Right. So there might be that not double entering of information, but the lead might have to put their information in the web form because that's where we want them to opt in.
Yeah.
And get the good data into Infusionsoft.
Right.
But we would still monitor it in, say, Mailchimp and go, hey, they clicked and opened and didn't fill in the form, but we'll still pull them across into Infusionsoft because they're a warm person.
Yeah.
They're engaged in the content.
Yeah.
And it's just watching and making sure of that. So and so they do, if anyone is thinking, Mailchimp is good and these other platforms are good because they allow you to test and do it, but it's as soon as they get to a point where we can't go outside the box, that's where people will get stuck.
Yep.
When they want to do something a little bit more custom and talk to a bit more of a different program, it just gets harder and harder when things get a bit more complex.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I've still got a million questions. We're pretty much running out of time, so I've broken my cardinal rule of having an open-ended conversation. But look, we've done an hour and 45 minutes, so I think we'll have to leave it there. Yep. And I think I'm going to have to get you back on if that's okay.
Fine with me. And
we'll have a chat a bit further about this. There's so much information.
There is, and I can talk about it all the time. And I'm sure there will be people being like, Mailchimp's the best thing ever, and all,
Yeah, you've got your fanboys for everything.
Oh, for everything. I mean, you've got, don't get me started on Mac and PC. Like, any program
No.
You've got, don't get me started on Mac and PC. Like, any program people.
No, we're not going down that path. No.
Every, person has their favourites and their things. Yeah. And I don't say that I'm right in any of all this sort of stuff. Well, that's why I asked
about getting information across, because we find the same thing with CAD software, right?
Yeah.
Like you go to a sort of a broad networking function where there's a lot of CAD people involved, and throw in the old cat amongst the pigeons of what's the best software to use, and run out the door, watch the fight ensue. It's the same in everything. But what I've found more importantly than anything is that especially smaller clients, smaller people who are using maybe a really niche program because they started with that and they know it, or through their research they found that it does this one really great thing for them that they love. When they, like you say, they outgrow it pretty quickly. So Mailchimp's the example you keep using, and it's a great example because, like you say, the free version, it might be great when you're starting out and you've got 10 or 15 or 100 people or 200 people or whatever their limit is. And then when you hit that bigger limit, you have to either pay for it or you have to find another or better software. By the time you've got 500 people in your mailing list, your business has grown to a point where you sort of need something bigger and more comprehensive than just Mailchimp anyway. Yeah. So what I find is, so long as you can sort of go to the client and say, hey, look, it's all right, we can get all that information that you've got, you're not going to lose it. We can migrate that across. Might be painful, but we can make that happen. All right, well, thank you very, very much for your time. Really appreciate it. It's been really informative. I've certainly learned some stuff here, and I'm going to be thinking about this for weeks now.
That's it.
Ruined
There's
my
a lot,
Christmas.
There's a lot that you can implement.
I'm going to be thinking about this for weeks now.
That's it. There's a lot, there's a lot that you can implement, but it's also just start somewhere. Like if people are just thinking, I'll just start somewhere, just do it.
Just get it going. Like you're saying before, the first step is starting. Like the where it's heading in the future is we're all going to start doing this. Okay. All right. Well, thanks again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to having a chat again soon.
So that was my chat with Kathryn. As I think you should be able to tell from the conversation, Kathryn is not only passionate and knowledgeable about what she is doing, but very fun and easy to deal with as a person in general. So if you're looking to implement CRM for your business, large or small, then it is well worth looking her up. Normally at the end of a chat like this, I like to give my guests a chance to give themselves a plug and tell you where to get in touch with them. But due to the rush nature of the end of this conversation, I missed that. Sorry about that, Kathryn. So I'll have to do that on Kathryn's behalf. You can find all the information you need about her business at klsservices.com.